it's not like the situation in Britain where prime minister is ultimately beholden to his party, beholden to his parliamentary party colleagues in particular. The president is elected directly. The president is beholden to nobody in his party. He's already gone through a primary process where he's won his primary process for the Democratic Party. He's won most votes. The only way Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate in November is if Joe Biden decides that he doesn't want to be the candidate in November. And everything we know about Joe Biden, this is a man who's been in politics and has been striving to be president for the best part of his 50-plus year career in politics. He's not going to give it up. So while there's dismay and alarm about what they saw on Thursday night among a lot of Democrats, but Biden is the nominee and they're stuck with him.
Tis 6:38. President Biden has rejected calls to stand down as the Democrat candidate for the US presidential election. At a rally in North Carolina yesterday, the president said, "I know how to get things done, and I know when you get knocked down, you get back up." But will his fight back be enough to end calls for him to quit? Here's Gerard Baker, editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal.
The debate on Thursday night was an absolutely unmitigated disaster for Joe Biden. Senior people, senior Democrats I've spoken to in the last 24 hours have said it was probably the worst debate performance by any candidate in any presidential debate in modern history. Anybody who's seen it, you'll have seen the clips. People will have heard the mumbling and the stumbling and the fumbling and the loss of concentration and the looks. If you looked at the debate, Joe Biden was looked lost throughout. It was just about the worst possible performance he could have put in. In the immediate aftermath of that, there was some buzz among some Democrats you could speak to who were like, wow, this is as bad as we possibly could ever have imagined it could be. And what are we going to do? We've got to maybe think about getting him off the ballot, getting someone else in, because we're 4 months away from the election. And if this goes on, he's going to lose to Donald Trump. But Callum, that's not really a very serious proposition because one of the important things to understand, obviously, about the U.S. is the U.S. Constitution is not like the situation in Britain where prime minister is ultimately beholden to his party, beholden to his parliamentary party colleagues in particular. The president is elected directly. The president is beholden to nobody in his party. He's already gone through a primary process where he's won his primary process for the Democratic Party. He's won most votes. The only way Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate in November is if Joe Biden decides that he doesn't want to be the candidate in November. And everything we know about Joe Biden, this is a man who's been in politics and has been striving to be president for the best part of his 50-plus year career in politics. He's not going to give it up. So while there's dismay and alarm about what they saw on Thursday night among a lot of Democrats, but Biden is the nominee and they're stuck with him.
Yeah, stuck with him is the thing. I'm quite taken by that because there's also this interesting aspect developing in reporting, which is perhaps not unusual, but it does carry real gravity in this situation of the private conversations and the private feelings of those within the party versus what we're guessing in public. And perhaps the most obvious example of this in terms of the public messaging comes from Barack Obama, who posted last night online, bad debate nights happen, trust me, I know, but this election is still a choice between someone who's fought for ordinary folks his entire life and someone who only cares about himself. He goes on and ends his post with the link to joebiden.com. They're expressing support. Now, there's an argument that this is simply what Barack Obama has to do. This is just the right message, if you like, for this moment in time. But is there an interesting dilemma for the Democrats here in actually the inner turmoil versus how they're presenting themselves publicly?
So again, Callum, as you say, there has been inner turmoil. Again, there was dismay in response to the debate. What we're seeing, though, with Obama tweeting what he tweeted, Bill Clinton very shortly afterwards, I understand very clearly that there's a concerted campaign to shore up Joe Biden again in those hours after the debate, with people running around, a lot of Democrats running around like headless chickens saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? Is there any possibility that he could possibly be persuaded to step down? It was obviously wasn't going to be persuaded to step down. But so what the party needs to do is to sort of calm the nerves, to sort of soothe the panic. And so you've seen that with Obama, you've seen it with Clinton, you'll see it again, as I understand it, in the course of, there'll be a rollout over the course of the next 24 hours of senior Democrats congressional Democrats right now, other people, other figures, leading figures in the party coming out and saying exactly what Barack Obama and Bill Clinton both said. It's very strikingly choreographed. Everybody can have a bad night. Joe had a bad night on Thursday, but he's still our candidate. He's the right man to beat Donald Trump. He's absolutely essential, and we'll rally around him. So it is an effort to to sort of stop the panic, to pour a little oil on those troubled waters. And I say we'll see more of it. But what it won't. I think the interesting question, Callum, is whether this will be the message for the next 24, 48 hours or so. We don't really have yet any polling evidence on the basis to answer the question, how bad was that debate in the public's eye for Joe Biden? And we'll see. The interesting thing will be when we start to see the poll numbers in about another week or so, when they factor in the debates, whether or not Biden was already slipping a little bit behind Donald Trump in the polls. If he were to slip significantly further, then I expect you will hear more panic in the Democratic Party, and there will be need to do somewhat more than what Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and others have done. But at the moment, this is a kind of stop the bleeding. Everybody rally round, stop wetting, stop bedwetting as they call it, and get in line, get behind Joe Biden, and stay calm, don't panic.
Yeah. In terms of what you say there about polling and the impact this debate has kind of on the electoral reality, isn't the other electoral reality that Joe Biden is the candidate because nobody else in the Democratic Party polls better than him?
Yeah, that's one of the problems they have. I mean, if first of all, there are all kinds of technical complexities. Were Joe Biden suddenly to announce tomorrow that he wanted to stand down, his name is already on the ballot in a number of states, and it will be very hard to get it removed legally. He's all the money that he and Kamala Harris have raised. There would be a legal fight over who would get that money because it's been raised for him. There's all kinds of legal and other problems like that. And the much larger problem is, as you say, is who anyway would replace him. I mean, it's very striking that Kamala Harris, who is his vice president, remember, he picks Kamala Harris when a presidential candidate picks a vice presidential nominee, they're picking someone who they essentially are saying is the right person to take over from me in the case of an emergency. Well, again, if we have an emergency now at the top of the Democratic Party, then the natural thing in normal circumstances would be that Kamala Harris would be expected to succeed. Nobody really thinks that's a plausible outcome because Kamala Harris's polling ratings are even worse than Joe Biden. She fares worse in a head-to-head matchups with Donald Trump than Joe Biden does. So Kamala Harris, who would expect to be the nominee, would have a very hard time getting it. Remember, this would all have to be decided at the convention, which takes place in August. There are other candidates. Obviously, there's Gavin Newsom of California, but he's really California's way out of the mainstream of American politics these days. Pretty tough for him. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, is more mainstream, more centrist, perhaps more appealing candidate. There are a lot of them out there, and another reason why I think this is just so implausible is you'd have an all-out fight between these candidates in a scramble in the next 8 weeks ahead of the convention to try and get votes, which would probably just make the Democratic Party look. Right now it looks like it's led by a very old man who's not really in control of his faculties. And it could be replaced by the spectacle of a party fighting with itself for the next 8 weeks, which would take us up to just a little more than 2 months up to the election. So that prospect of chaos, of bloodletting, of Democrats hammering away at each other in the course of the next couple of months is yet another reason why I think the probability that Joe Biden stays on the ballot is extremely high.
Gerard Baker, their editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal, who basically is portraying this idea of a real dilemma for the Democrats, but actually with no way out. What are they supposed to do? If Joe Biden was to suddenly stand down, there are all sorts of technical, bureaucratic implications of that, whether it's about the money raised, the process to replace. And, we are not unfamiliar with the idea here in the UK, are we, of political party leaders standing down and causing real problems, division and chaos within their parties. Is that something the Democrats could actually stomach?
But it's even more in the US because it's presidential. It's not about the party, it's about the person. Yeah. As you rightly point out, if the donors have donated to Biden, then Biden steps aside. Do they want their money back?
Yeah, exactly.
Does it roll over? How does that work?
All sorts of legal implications in that.
So much.
It's a very difficult time for the Democrats, who seem to have this sort of public recognition that Joe Biden is not the kind of president he was 4 years ago. I think that is certainly fair to say. But what is the way out? Is there one? And Gerard suggesting perhaps there's not.
Stay with us here on Times Radio Breakfast. In the next few minutes, we're going to talk to Talk Sports' Tom Clayton. It is the start of the knockout phase at Euro 2024.